Alright, I guess we're kind of back. Yesterday, as you saw, there was a lot of mess that took place. Mess has been pretty much cleaned up. Airbrush has been cleaned up, the inside and outside. But I always want to go ahead and throw some additional thinner through the system to go ahead and get anything that I might have missed. Let's face it, there's some parts that are not necessarily the easiest to get at, but also you know, even if I had, you know, airbrush cleaning system and whatnot, it still could potentially miss. For the most part, I use Q-tips. I'll go ahead and take a lot of the fluff off to go ahead and get into the small pipes and whatnot. Been invaded by a Toby behind me. So, like I said, just going to go ahead and... Oops, would help if I go ahead and turn on the pressure. The tank is on. I'm going to blow it at 20 psi. And it won't take much to go ahead and get this cleaned out. Alright, in case anything dripped out to the bottom of the pot, there's that. Toss away that particular Q-tip. Toby, you're a long way up my backside right now. Literally. Alright, one cleaned airbrush. I love this little toy. Yeah, not that it's really a toy, but I think everyone kind of knows what I mean. At least I hope so. Alright, today we are spending time going ahead and getting it. I'm going to go ahead and spend some time doing some puttying. I guess I'll leave that on top. So there are various different brands of putty that are out there for everyone to go ahead and use. Of course, Tester puts out their own putty brand. I will admit, I'm not necessarily a fan of the Tester putty. Not that it won't work. I find that it tends to be a little bit on the airy side, if you will. So when you go to sand it, you get a lot more divots in it than some. Squadron makes an excellent putty. It's white in color, which has one disadvantage I found, is that it makes it kind of difficult to see if everything's been sanded properly and you don't have any fine divots and whatnot in it, which is the only thing that I really dislike about this. Oops. Whereas Bondo, yeah, stuff that they use on cars, the glazing and spot putty, it's red. So when you go to use it, one, be prepared to go ahead and get your skin tinted a different color. But, as you can probably see, it goes on red. I usually like to go ahead and put a little bit onto a container lid or whatnot, so that way, if it happens to be liquefied a little bit like this guy was right now, it just needs to be blended up a little bit. But I find that the red, you can easily, or easier, it is easier to go ahead and see any divots and whatnot in it. Now don't get me wrong, when you get finished with sanding and whatnot, you're still going to want to put a primer coat on it to go ahead and help see it. So that is what I am up to today. Let's see, what type of container do I want to go ahead and use. Got a few different types of lids. I'm going to go ahead and use my KFC lid here. So, again, just kind of, you don't necessarily need much to go ahead and get you started. And it's been long enough since I've used this that the lid may not want to go ahead and open up nicely. Yeah, it's kind of junked in there. Like I said, it's been a while since I've used this. There we go. Okay. Okay, hopefully you can see. Here is the junk on the top of the lid. Like I said, I hadn't gone ahead and used this in a while, so it had settled out. Here's what happened. You got a nice smooth little bead, if you will, there. Once I cleaned out the top part. So I'm going to go ahead and take a toothpick. Could use the flat blade of my X-Acto knife, and I do on occasionally, depending on what I've got. And I'll go ahead and I'll use that to go ahead and lay it down. So I've got a couple seats, if I remember correctly, that have some divots on the sides just a little bit. Now, what was that had? Got some divots on the back of that guy there, but that's the one that goes back where Dom's seated, so it won't show up. Okay, here's part of one. Okay. Now one thing I am going to do though, help it sit in there just a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and take my X-Acto. And you know, some people do this and some people won't. I've seen it go both ways. The putty will stick, typically either way. But I like to go ahead and give it a little bit of something to help it to stick to, if you know what I mean. Otherwise it may go ahead and pop out. And I've actually heard that happening with cars on a few occasions, where they'll go ahead and they'll get the car all nicely painted out and whatnot. And that's after they've, you know, done the Bondo and whatnot. And then, lo and behold, you know, a few years down the line, what happens? A piece of Bondo goes bumping out during, you know, hitting a bump in the road or something like that. So, okay, and hopefully you can see these guys here. There's that ridge that goes all the way around. Model builder has the most skills when ultimately they're done. Still got paint up my nose from yesterday. I definitely should have worn my respirator despite having good ventilation in here. Take a look here on Errol's fuselage. I know I'll have to go ahead and take care of the seams. Yeah, there's a big piece right there. Ugh, I hate that. It's right where there's a bunch of rivets and whatnot. Now, welcome back to another episode, or maybe I should say part 2 of this particular piece. Started doing the putty work earlier and went ahead and let it dry. Typically you don't have to wait but more than a few hours. But it was getting a little bit late and the boys wanted to be fed, and by the time I got finished with that, it was time to go to bed. So I did. So, go a little bit more over the putty work. As we talked about before, there are several different brands of putty you can go ahead and get, and no one is better than the other. It comes down to personal preference. Squadron putty, I like it. I like the Bondo as well. I prefer the Bondo because I find it easier to go ahead and be able to see the work that I'm doing. If there's divots in there, I can readily see it. When it dries kind of a dark red. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but yeah, I can see it on the flat panel there, so I know you should be able to see it. But it dries kind of a hazy, dark red brick color. When it goes down on the model, it goes kind of as a bright brick red. So it's very easy to tell when it's dry. Same thing with the Squadron putty. It goes kind of a paler white color. But one of the things about any putty is that in the process of drying, it does shrink. Especially, if you're used to doing maybe some candle making, used to going ahead and doing re-pours as it's going along. Well, it's not uncommon when you go ahead and do putty work that you may have to go ahead and after you sand it down, you might find that you still have some low spots, or you might find that there was an air bubble in it. So you'll have to go ahead and go ahead and use some more putty, and then go ahead and let it dry, sand it. The putty work tends to be more of the tedious type work for model builders. Pardon me, some black tea, unsweetened, I might add. So when you're going to go ahead and file down or sand down the putty work, it's recommended that you probably either use like a foam sanding block like I've got right here. You can go ahead and use sanding paper. I would recommend using the wet dry sanding paper. That way, if you've done any work on cars and whatnot, you know that you want to go ahead and use the wet dry sandpaper. Keep it moist. It works pretty well like that. But when you're doing it, don't be surprised if what you're doing exposes some other points. When I was working on this piece the other day, it had a couple of divot spots, and you can kind of see where they're located here and here. But it looks like there was maybe a small little sink spot right along here. And I don't know how well you'll be able to see here, but right along that spot there. So, but don't be afraid to go ahead and rub it with your finger. Just go ahead and see if you got any high or low spots. I can see that I've got a low spot right in there because it's still the same color of red as it was when it was untouched. So I will definitely need to go ahead and go over that. Plus, this is a good time to go ahead and, if you got any glue seams, to go ahead and go over them. Sand them down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and yesterday when I was going ahead and doing this, you saw me go ahead and pour a little bit into this little container here. It's not uncommon for me to actually go ahead and just put a little daub right on top of my hand. Just like that. Get some of the runniness out. And then this way, just go ahead and take a little dollop right off the skin. Alright, put that aside to dry. Okay. And then on to the next piece. We're back. Apparently Toby decided to get behind me and he found the container of canopy glue. So he decided, ooh, something to chew on. Little munchkin. So I heard him chewing away on something beneath me. And it was obviously plastic. And that's what it was that he had. The only bad thing about doing the Bondo is you end up with a little bit of red skin. No, that was not meant as a racial slur. I mean, the skin has actually dyed slightly red for a few days. Which, that doesn't bother me. So, anywho's. What did I want to do next? I've got this guy here. And let's see what we can do with the... We're going to go ahead and put in the collective and the control sticks. Now they are going to get painted a slightly different color than what they are now. One side of the stick has a little upward notch, which I'm going to go ahead and carefully try to take it out. And the other some of it. Now when I actually go to paint control sticks here, now and here's the control stick. See how well it shows up there. The stick itself, not the hand part up here at the top, but the curved part, if you will, that's kind of a light gray. The hand grip itself is black, except for the grip area on the side and front, which if you were an archer, the front part would be referred to as the belly. So we're talking about from this side around to this side in the front. The back part would be black. There is no control surface across the top to go ahead and, you know, put the firing buttons and turbo thrust, or as it was called in season 1, what was it, torque control, something like that. Although I may go ahead and just put a little drop of glue where it would be, or not glue, but paint. Okay, kind of strip the paint off from the bottom area here. Now, I've never had the pleasure of flying in a Bell 222. I have been in a Korean era Bell helicopter. That was on the fun side, to say the least. We have a local kind of like college classes, but it's a weekend type thing, where they offer fun events for adults and kids, and so they offered one time a class in helicopters, where you had an evening of basic flight information, and then a week or two later, when it was convenient for the pilot, the class then went ahead and re-met at the airfield. And when you're not getting your license by any means, so, you know, kind of get that out of your head if you're thinking about that. But what it was is it kind of gave everyone the basics of helicopters. And of course, you know, having watched Airwolf, and watched it, you know, more than a couple times in reruns and in, you know, having the DVDs. Do a little bit of the basics. So when, you know, they asked about control surfaces and, people understood, the concept of flight for a helicopter. I kind of had a bit of a knowledge. And when the instructor, said to me that it sounds like you got some knowledge of helicopters, I'm like, yeah, I have just enough to be dangerous to myself. With that, he got a little bit of a laugh. I told him that, I'd watched enough History Channel on helicopters and, and also a few shows. I didn't mention the Airwolf, of course, by name. But I told him, I was interested in Sikorsky's, what he had done. And then, of course, what was done with the helicopter during World War II. And yes, they did have helicopters during World War II. And they were on the primitive side in comparison to what you see now. But they did exist. And then, of course, as they progressed through Korea and, the Korean War, Vietnam, to present day. So I told him, I found it all fascinating, which is part of the reason why I was there for the class, to try to go ahead and garner some more basic information and appreciation. Which I did. Alright, so here we are so far. There we go. That little engineering piece right there, the collective, one of the control sticks. And we'll go ahead and we'll put in the other control stick. Kind of interesting. You would have thought that those sticks, since the legs would be on either side of the stick, and then they've got the pedals in front that go ahead and control the rudder, or the rotor blade on the back, you'd think that those sticks would be better centered in between those pedals. Hawk side definitely is. On the right, the left-hand side, where either Dom or Caitlin would sit, is a little bit over to the left. So, kind of interesting. Okay. Although not ready yet. Because we still have a little bit of puttying work to go ahead and do. What's in there? And nothing's in there, but so it should look like that. Let me get this out of my way. Okay, see, it's not quite centered, but so it should look something like that here shortly. So, and of course the front landing gear would be sitting in there kind of like that. Alright. So I'm going to let those pieces that are there dry. I want them to be fully dry when I go ahead and install the seats, because I don't want them to rotate around or pop out while I'm putting in the seats. Otherwise, I'll have to go ahead and deal with that. And these guys being kind of on the fine side, fine and delicate, I want to go ahead and give them as much strength in there as possible. So I'm actually going to let that dry. Then I'm going to go ahead and come back in a little bit, come underneath, put a spot of glue in the bottom of them as well. That way it helps give it a little bit extra strength. So for now, this is Tom with TCPIII Modeling, and I'm going to be putting together a few clips together, shot over the past couple of days, to show a little bit of the putty work. I'm not going to go ahead and show the finishing part of it. I think everyone kind of has a good idea of the basics at this point, so I may go ahead and show some more of me, adding more stuff together. But for right now, with the putty work, I don't think you need to see any more, because as you saw, the putty work takes time, patience, and most people aren't going to go ahead and watch 20 minutes of that. So till later on, have a good day. Happy modeling. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.